You are now listening to the Invited Podcast with Cedric Harris and Tia McLean. You've officially been invited.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Invited Podcast. Today we have the privilege of speaking with Miss Whitney Thompson, food educator, blogger, podcast host, first and foremost, as I should have said, first follower of Christ, chef, interior designer. The list goes on and on and on. Whitney has devoted her time and her life to serving those in need and spreading the love of God. And today we're going to get into just more about her and her story. So thank you so much, Whitney, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
Yeah, welcome in. We're super excited. I've known Whitney for a long time and just been able to see her grow in a number of ways. But just first, let's learn a little bit more about you. Can you tell us a little brief bio about yourself and a little bit about your upbringing and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I am originally from St. Louis, Missouri.
Yes, ma'am.
So I moved to Dallas right after college. In college, I studied. I changed my major probably 5 times, clearly, because I have so many interests. But I finished out with a double major in communication and social work. So moved down to Dallas. I came down here actually for a birthday trip, my senior year of college. So in February of my senior year. And I came down here and we loved it. I was like, this is where I want to live.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah. The set was already down here.
Yeah.
I think I applied at your job too.
Probably so.
I
used to try to put everybody on.
Yes, a man for the people. But yeah, so ended up getting a different job.
Yeah.
But I did get a job down here. So I moved down here that summer, literally a few months later.
Mm-hmm.
Been here ever since. I am a project manager by trade. So that's what I do in my 9 to 5. And then, as you hinted, I have a myriad of other interests. So I love anything dealing with the home. So that is kind of my space, my sphere. So I love family. I love. I love decor. I love cooking. I love hosting. Anything to do with the home, that's right up my alley. And I'm probably always doing something related to that. So,
yes.
Yeah, is that a good enough?
Yeah.
Right. And I wish you all could follow Whitney because her Instagram is literally like one of the most fun, interactive Instagrams. So she talked about how much she loves like home and everything. Like she posts like which lamp would look cute in my living room.
I vote every time. I never skip a story. I'm always intrigued. That's something I'm always looking forward to for sure. And then another thing, obviously, like you mentioned, the cooking piece. That's something that every Sunday, every Saturday, I'm like writing notes. I actually like screenshotted something. It's like, okay, this is how you cook rice in the Instant Pot. But can you tell us more about Whitney's kitchen and how that came about?
Yeah, so as y'all mentioned, I always post on my stories. Rarely on my page, but always on my stories.
Yeah.
I actually, so in September of 2018, I finally decided to leave my job. I just felt like I was not in alignment with where I should be. I kind of felt like the season at that particular position was over. So in September of 2018, I put in my 1 month notice because I actually liked the job. So I gave him like a 1 month notice. I was really sad about leaving, but I really felt like the Lord was calling me out of it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what into. So I was like, all right, Lord. Luckily, it was a well-paying job. So I had a savings that allowed me to just kind of maintain my lifestyle for at least 6 months. So I was like, well, I'll just figure it out, right? Like, so I left that job in September of 2018 and, October of 2018, so about a month later.
Yeah.
And then I was at home, right? Like all the time. And I realized I don't know what my interests are, right? Like people would ask, like, what do you do for fun? Or what do you do on the weekends? And I'm like, because I think sometimes you can lose your connection to what your interests are, your hobbies are, as you're coming of age, right, through like the college season and high school, and then you kind of look up at 24 and you're like, do I even like the same stuff anymore?
Yes.
I don't know what I like. So truth be told, I truthfully didn't cook much up until then, but I started watching Food Network, right? And so there's this show called God's Grocery Games. And the premise of the show is that he essentially has 4 contestants in a grocery store,
Okay.
and they have different challenges, right? So he'll say, make a meal using only leftovers, or make a meal and you only got $10 and it needs to be a high class appetizer, right? And I used to watch it, so and I'm like, I could do this.
Yes.
Right? Like, I could do this. But I would cook in college, like for my friends every now and then and things like that, but I wasn't cooking all the time. And so I was watching kind of their techniques, and I'm like, I know I can do this. So I didn't have anything else to do, and I would literally just challenge myself. I would say, I'm going to the grocery store, and I'm going to give myself $20, and I'm going to see what is the highest, like, quality lunch I can make, right, with this $20. And so really it started out as just something I was doing for fun. But then I started cooking all of the time. Like, I was at the grocery store every morning. Like, it was crazy. I knew all of the people by name. I would, like, walk up to the... Literally, that's exactly how it was. I would go, like, from the bread section. I'd be like, hey, Pam. And I'd walk around produce. And it was always the same guy stocking. So I'd speak to him. And then I would walk around the corner to the seafood counter. And I'm talking to the butcher. And it was just crazy. I was there every morning. And so the more that I was cooking, that just ended up being what I was posting. Because initially my page was called like Life with Whitney. Because I was like, well, I'll just document my journey.
Right.
Who knows what I'm going to do when I leave this job. But then the page shifted from being like couponing and like what deals can I find at Target to look at all of these different meals that I'm making. And people were really liking that.
Yes.
And I was really liking it. So it was just kind of working out. And so we were looking to move, and we ended up deciding to move downtown.
Okay.
And so as soon as we decided to move downtown, I felt the Lord tell me, like, because people, by this point, people were like, we need a cookbook, release an ebook, like all of this type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I know that cooking for profit is not what I want to do.
Okay.
But I had all of this food, and at this point, I didn't really know what I was going to do with the cooking thing, and I didn't know what I was going to do from a career standpoint,
Right.
because I'm
Right.
jobless. So, the Lord essentially was like, if you do the e-cookbook, right? Like if you choose to monetize cooking, he asked, what are you going to do with all the extra food, right? And so we were positioning to move downtown into this beautiful townhouse. Like it was, like it was gorgeous.
Yeah, I remember it. I remember it, yeah.
Gorgeous. And but the area is close to the farmer's market, right? And it's surrounded, the homeless population there is ridiculous. And I would always think, like, how will I be able to live in this luxurious townhouse, right? And then just beneath me, people are sleeping on the streets. And I knew that wasn't going to sit right. So I said, well, if I'm playing with the idea of this cookbook and starting up this blog, I can take all of the extra food from recipe testing and donate it. So initially, Whitney's Kitchen Co. was stemmed from, maybe I will try to do like the food blogger route, like the Dallas chef thing. But what am I going to do with all this food that I'm recipe testing? I said, well, I'll just give it away. But I did not do that, right? And so I ended up rolling out Whitney's Kitchen Co. And it was like a blog, right? And it had like a newsletter component to this email. And I was making these meals, posting these pictures, but I wasn't actually recipe testing, right? I was just kind of posting as I was freestyling. And so I didn't have any direction. So long story short, Whitney's Kitchen Co. was delayed by like a year because I didn't follow through on that desire to even release the e-cookbook, because I realized I didn't want to cook for free. But what I love doing, actually when the pandemic hit, right? So a year later, a full year, I know this is like a long story, but it was a long story. A full year later, when the pandemic hit, I literally just made up like a big pot of chicken Alfredo. And I took out like 7 meals in some Tupperware containers, right? Because I was thinking, how lonely do they have to be, right? Like at least like everybody's in the house now. And so like, what's going on out there? So I would go out, but we would just talk, and they would make jokes, and they would ask how I was doing, and they would be like offering to help me with things. And it was just the most beautiful exchange, right? Like I truly enjoyed the connection to serve the community members around me, right? And it was there that I was like, well, these people are all just people who were just like me, who had one wrong turn, right? Or one medical emergency that caused them to lose a house or a car. And the way that our economy is set up is almost impossible to bounce back, right? So from that point forward, that's just what I've been doing. Every week I've been packaging up meals. I make a home cooked meal. It's always something that you would want to eat on a Sunday, right? Like it's always something that you could go to your grandma's house and get, just because the entire premise of it is it's not about feeding the hungry. process, right? Like it's not as simple as, well, let's just package up these sandwiches and bags of chips. It's more so, how do we restore the soul of a man, right? Like when you consider homelessness and what it does to a person, it brings you down to literally the bare essentials for life, right?
Yeah.
So just constantly in a search for shelter, food, and water. Well, what that does is it strips you of your desire for anything greater. And so if you're living in a survival mode, things like friendship, connection, they come secondary, right? But how do you ever get back on your feet if you lose what pushes you, right? If you lose your fire. And so I just truly believe that home is really where that fire starts, even as kids, even as adults, to have a place of comfort that you go back to where you can get warm love and big laughs and you know what I mean, people who just unconditionally accept you. They just want to know how you're doing. It's that adults are looking for. And I said, well, hell, can we cuss right here?
Yeah.
I said, well, hell, adults, people with houses don't have this, right? Like people with houses have shelter and still can't get on their feet, right? And it's because homelessness is not a condition that is relative to shelter or to where you live. It's a condition of, do you have a home to return to? And so that's what I try to do. I try to provide as many of the comforts of home as I can. Just because they ask, it's so funny because they ask all the time, like when I go and I feed, and I always just ask, like, y'all hungry? Did you eat today? And they be like, what you got? Is this sandwiches? And I'm like, nah. I'm like, and I'll tell them when I make it for the week, and they're like, oh yeah, I'll take that. I'll take 2 of them. But they get tired of bologna sandwiches and bags of chips. It's like I
like anybody,
when I ate a bologna sandwich last.
Right.
Like, so yeah. And not to discredit the bologna sandwiches because they're necessary, right? We would have nothing else. But that's really not what we try to do, right? We try to provide the comforts of home. So even for Christmas, we gave like Christmas stockings because I was thinking, well, what makes Christmas, right? And not just, oh, here's a pack of socks because we know you cold, right? Like this, I was like, kids love running downstairs and like getting their stocking and like, what's in my stocking? So that's what we did for them. We made these huge stockings and we stuffed them with like lottery tickets, hot hands warmers, like candy, cookies, both fun things and necessities, right? Flashlights, lotions, toothbrushes, and like grandma's cookies.
Stuff they're gonna like.
Lottery tickets, exactly. And they were so excited. McDonald's gift cards, and they was like, "What's in here?" So they was shaking them out. So, long story short, that's what Whitney's Kitchen is. It's the merger of this hobby that I kind of started on unemployment, my faith, and just the sheer desire to provide a home to people outside of the context of a house.
I know you mentioned like you started near the farmers market and that homeless population. Do you go to different areas of DFW, and how do you pick which areas you go to?
I'm actually starting to get to know the camps a lot, and so it truly just depends on where the camps are moving to. So there are a few areas in town where you can always locate people, right? But they're on the move, and so they operate and they live in what are called camps. And so you notice a camp because you'll see tents pop up, or you'll see a community a community of anywhere from 5 to 25 people who gather, and they typically have their pets and things like that. And so I originally started just driving around. So this is like when I first started, I only had like 7 or 8 meals. I literally started with like 7 meals. And so I would just drive down 75, and just whenever I would see a person, I would say, hey, you hungry? And they'd be like, yeah. And so I would give them the food, and they would always get excited. So the packaging is important, right? Because when they see the Tupperware and they feel that it's still hot, they like, oh, this is hot. They say it. They like, it's still hot. I'm like, I just cooked it. And so they'll literally like put their sign down and go sit down and start eating right there. Yeah, so that's how I initially started finding people, right? But then as I got more and more meals, I was able to go to camps, right? But what was happening is I found myself at this one particular crux where I was doing about 15 to 20 meals, right? So I was up from 7. I was almost at averaging 20. But I would go to these camps and I would run out, right? And I would be like 2 to 3 meals short. So to your point, different camps are different sizes, and I just found those by driving around. So there are also different demographics. So there's also like a camp that I go to that's near 75 and y'all know where the Target is, City Place?
Haskell,
Haskell, right.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But it's largely made up of Hispanics, right? And so whenever I do meals that I know that they would be excited about, or meals that I know that they never had before, I'll go to that camp. When I do like deep soul food meals, right? So if I'm like frying pork chops or smothering chicken, I take it down to a camp that's down by the farmer's market, because there's a camp of about 25 people, and they pretty much are all black, right? Like all black and fairly young. Up in North Dallas, there's a new camp that's popped up right around 635 and 75, and it's a large camp. It's about 30 to 40 people, and that's the most diverse camp I've seen yet. And so now I serve there a lot, just because I have enough meals. So I choose my camps based off of the meals that I'm serving, how many meals I have that day, because I typically know how many people will be in the area, and I don't like to run out. So there were times when I would feed downtown, and I would be short. Like, I would have 15 meals. So say I would start with 20 meals or so, and I would hand out a few on the way, and then I would get to this camp down here, like near the farmer's market, and I would have like 13 left, but there would be 17 or 18 people. So I would have to leave, go get pizza, like boxes of pizza. I take everybody pizza order, because it's a big thing to just not give them things and to ask them, what kind of pizza y'all like, right? I came down here with food and ran out with 5 short, so what kind of pizza do you like? As opposed to, I'll go grab 5 cheese pizzas and
call it a day.
So but I would get so frustrated. I'm like, how do I keep running out? But now I'm at capacity. My Polar kitchen can't take anymore, so I just have my camps based off of how many meals I have, what I'm serving, and where they are at the time, like, because they're constantly on the move. So I have a few regulars that I run into all of the time. They like look forward to me. They like tell me how their week was. Literally, they point out other people. One that people are super familiar with from my stories is this guy named Clayton. He was literally like one of the first people that I ever served, and I still serve him every Sunday to this day. So he's super cool. He always is telling me, like, he's so smart as a whip. So he always, every time I pull up to Clayton, I gotta turn my hazard lights on, because I'm gonna be there for about 10 minutes. He gonna talk. So yeah, that's how I choose him. Just based off of.
Y'all don't understand how excited I am and was to talk to Whitney today, because there's a huge homeless population in Dallas, and so when I moved here, that was really shocking, because it doesn't matter where you are. You can be near North Park Mall, where there's a Gucci store and this and that. It does not matter. A lot of the areas in Dallas used to be very urban. They were very different than what they look like now, and so a lot of the people have been like misplaced, and this is the result of it. You have gentrified all of the areas, and then there just is not a place for the people who like used to live here. And just when you look around, you want to do something, you want to help, but a lot of people don't know how to get started. And so I'm just so happy to talk to Whitney about just finding a place to get started and being able to serve and support these people. And I do love that you're saying, I'm not just here, take this and be happy about it. No, I want to treat you like I would treat anybody else, and give you things that you're happy about getting, that you're like excited for me to like share with you. And
exactly.
So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I am interested in how you are funding all this. So you talked about pizza orders and giving them stockings and gift cards. How are you supporting? How can someone help if they wanted to help out?
So I'll be rolling out a donations portion to my platform within the next month. The goal is to have that rolled out. I'm waiting on to get my official 501c3 certification back. So I've been a nonprofit for about seven or 8 months now. So I was incorporated in the state of Texas as a nonprofit in August of this year, but I didn't go get the 501c3. So the way that nonprofits are organized is you have to register on the state level, right? So you have to let the state of Texas know, hey, I'm here, I'm operating. But then on the federal level, you have to let the IRS know, hello, please don't tax me, I'm trying to help people out.
Yeah.
Right? And because I was still trying to figure out what I wanted, what Whitney's Kitchen Code would be in the long run, right? Yeah. Because like I told y'all, we had this long thing where feeding people was always a component, but the other component was, well, do I monetize any of this? Because people kept saying things like you can make a lot of money out there, so you should sell plates. But the truth is, like, that was like driving my anxiety crazy, and I hated it. I hated selling food for profit, and I hated cooking on demand. I hated it. So I just funded myself. To answer your question, it's all funded by the Lord. Like I have been so blessed to be high earning for most of my adult years, and even when I have not been, because there was a season right in the middle, truly, like that I really am just coming out of, where I was funding it off of prayer, and the Lord was just literally sending money. I've never missed a bill, but it's all out of my pockets right now. It all comes out of my pockets. I have amazing friends who will do things like, well, let me buy your cases of water for the week. Or, like I had a friend that was like, well, let me make chocolate covered strawberries for Valentine's Day. Or Tia, right before this started, was like, I got a coat that we can, you know, can you use this coat? So things like that help a long way. But as far as just buying the food, I mean, Saturday nights at about 10, 11 o'clock, I'm going to the grocery store when it's quiet and everybody in there, and I'm just dragging 2 carts around. And I just figure it out, child. Put on my credit card, get the cash back, and pay it off so that I hopefully get some type of return from it. So that's what I do every week. But I'm going to start a donations platform as soon as I get the 501c3 back, just because I want people to be able to write that off on their taxes. But I'm nervous about that part, truthfully.
Why is that?
I'm nervous about Whitney's Kitchen Co. feels like my baby. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like my passion project, or this act of love that I bundle up and I give back to people. But when other people begin to invest in it, then you have some level of accountability to other people for that, right? And so they want to say, well, why don't you make this instead of that? Or, well, how much money did you spend on this? Well, can we get an earnings report at the end of the month? Or how many people did we serve? Where did my money go? So it adds another layer onto the business side of things, as well as onto the reputation management side of things. Yes. So as of right now, I don't answer to anybody but the Lord. But you start taking money from people, then it just changes the game. So I'm excited for it, but it'll make me like a real nonprofit and not just like this person that's serving meals out their kitchen. So
Gotcha. And I want to kind of touch on something that you mentioned earlier about just the humanity of people and like the soul of the people. And a lot of times, like Tia was saying, like you see homeless people and you're like, dang, that sucks. And you just keep driving wherever the case may be. And I think just as a society, we've kind of like dehumanized these people and don't realize that they're people just like you and I. And so I know you often post a lot of your interactions with the people that you're dealing with. And I love like listening. You're like, audio on, turn the audio on. So how's that process been as far as like just actually communicating, getting to know these people? And are there any like stories or actual people? I know you mentioned Clayton, but any others that like stand out to you throughout your journey?
Yeah, so I meet so many people. So I think ever since I was a child, I've always been just curious about the story behind things, right? Yeah. Because I think a byproduct of capitalism, right, is this idea that if you work hard and you are responsible, then you will not be homeless, right? You will be able to provide for yourself. You should be able to have a job and take care of yourself, right? But there's this whole other component where that's not truly life, right? And so when you look at things through that lens, the natural human inclination, even for the best of people, is when you see homeless people to be like, well, how did you get here? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what did you do to let yourself go this far, right? Even the best hearted of people. And so I think that thought steers people away from wanting to just interact or just say, hey, how you doing? Because people ask me things all the time, like, you're not scared out there? Or,
I have thought that.
You know, like, you don't think they're going to, like, bust you over there and kill you, right? I'm like, no, I don't think that. But, and I think, I just talk to them. As you hand people food, I think small gestures matter, right? So people can tell. So say I'm handing you a plate, but say I don't want my hand to touch yours. You can tell when I'm holding something at the edge and like, take it, right? Yeah. I don't do things like that, right? I touch hand to hand, skin to skin. I look them in their eyes. I hug them if they need a hug. I laugh with them, and I don't. You know how when people talk to babies, they do this like, oh hi, how are you?
Yeah.
I think when people are uncomfortable, they do that naturally. So people find themselves when they talk to homeless people, you know, they kind of like, hey, like how you doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like I talk to them the same I talk to y'all. So I'm like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, what are you doing over there? Like you've been standing right there for 2 hours now, circling around the block. What you doing? Right? So I talk to them like I mean like I'm everybody's cousin. I don't know, you know. So that portion of it just comes natural to me. I'll say I think because I understand the Bible says that. Man may make his steps, right, or organize his plan, but time and chance happen to them all, meaning we are all subject to being at the right place, wrong time, or just sheer bad luck,
Yeah.
right? Like, you think, like, what makes the pipe burst in my apartment
versus somebody
and
else's.
I lose everything versus everybody else in the building is fine. And like, this one pipe break, right? Like, time and chance happen to everybody. Yeah. And something like that, the pipe bursting in your apartment, well, if you don't have family or friends to depend on, and you lose everything in one sweep, and you got to pay this apartment back for whatever fees or whatever the case may be, just as quick, you could be living in your car and can never get back on your feet if you live in a minimum wage job. So I talk to him all the time. Stories that I get that are funny. I mean, like I said, I talk to Clayton. He's super cool. He's been all over the country. He'll tell you about all of the different cities, and he's always yes. So the city lets Clayton sleep in this garden basically as long as he like watches over, and they pay him $5 a week, right, to watch over this garden. But they have like phones. They have tablets, and they have it from when people lose their phones carelessly, right? People just in the club in deep element, like, oh shoot, I lost my phone, and they like, I found this iPhone on the street, right? And so,
it's mine now.
Yeah, so they connect it to Wi-Fi, and then they do things like they try to start themselves a YouTube channel. So there's one guy named Mr. Bill, right? He is blind. But he is so funny, right? He got all of these stories about how he find his boosters, and they take him to the club where he pop this, people pop their trunk and they got anything. He like, now I dress well. I like to wear Gucci. I like to wear Polo. And it's like, I heard you, Mr. Bill. Go ahead. You know what I mean? So, but he has a YouTube, and so they always are telling me things like, hey, follow me on your YouTube. It's a young guy that I just met this week. His name is last week. His name is Cameron. Okay. Fresh out on the streets, right? You can tell when they're new because what they do is they take people under their wing, right? So Clayton always has somebody that he's like, well, he just got here this week, or he be hoping he don't be out here long. Lady named Leslie, hilarious. Every time I see her, she say, "Is that my food, girl? Is that the food, girl?" But she travels all around the state of Dallas. She really does, and I mean the city of Dallas. And there's so many stories. There's people out there who were teachers. I met one lady, and her name was Rose, and she was a teacher. She was a teacher, and she lost her kids. She lost her husband. She lost her sanity, essentially. It was just a hard back-to-back thing, but she's smart as a whip. And every time I'm out there, she don't say nothing. And every time I'm like, Rose, you want something to eat? She's like, no, I'm good. And I said, you want it for later? She said, yeah, I'll take it for later. So she put it on the counter and stuff. There's countless stories. I highly encourage people to just speak to them.
Yeah.
So,
and we're definitely going to pick Whitney's brain. We're going to post also about how you all can help. I'm sure that she has lots of like recommendations for shelters where you can donate, you can bring items, bring clothes, because I know I want to do more. Just like I said earlier, just driving around, you will see somebody who is in need who you can help. So we'll definitely be sharing that later. But I love that you're sharing all these amazing stories. I do, however, want to learn more about maybe a time where your faith was tested, or there was like a challenge.
In life, or just in Whitney's Kitchen Co.
Let's do more recent, like in the past year or so.
Okay. So after I left Capital One, that's where I was at. After I left Capital One, which is not a secret, but I moved to the school district. So I was off for 6-7 months, enjoyed it, and then I went into marketing for the school district. Okay. Enjoyed the position. It was super chill, super laid back. But then when Corona hit and things hit the fan, and so I was like out of a job, right? And it wasn't because I was laid off. It was because they were needing me to make sacrifices in the pandemic that I could not make at the time, because there were I was living with someone who was high risk at the time, and I could not do a lot of the things that they were requesting that I do. Yeah. So I left there, and it was so crazy because I was thinking at this point, I'm gonna do Whitney's Kitchen Co. full time. And I went back to like, I'm gonna like sell plates every other weekend, and then use the money from selling plates to give the plates, right? So I was thinking, instead of serving every weekend, I'll serve 2 weekends, but then I'll sell 2 weekends.
The smash a meal, pass a meal.
Exactly, smash a meal, pass a meal.
I had one of those meals too. They hit.
So I was doing that. And so yeah, it was called Smash a Meal, Pass a Meal. And so people would essentially come and buy a meal from me. Then the next week I would take that money and purchase like meals for other people. Now, what people didn't know, which I don't know that I hid it, but it was because I was leaving my job at the time, and so I was like, I'm not going to be able to sustain Whitney's Kitchen Co. with no income.
Right.
But then I was like, well, it's a pandemic. Like, everybody's hiring from work from home.
Yeah.
So I took this little call center job. And this was so interesting for me because I had never gotten to work at a call center. And I always felt like that was something I was missing. I always felt like that was an experience.
It is. I've been there.
You know, like, I would just always hear all these funny stories about, like, the coworkers and the experience at call centers. It seemed like there was one standard, like, call center experience that just everybody had to have.
Yeah.
And I never had it. So I was like, this is my time.
This is my time.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I still had, you know, some savings. My bills were fine at the time, but I did not have nearly what I had when I was leaving Capital One. So I was like, you need income, sis. So they were paying like $19 an hour, and I was like, well, I can do this, right, for a cost. And I was like,
that's nice. Working from home?
Exactly. Because I'm like, I just need enough for the bare minimum.
Yeah.
This is where I discovered I hated cooking for, like, profit, right? So this is where I discovered I did probably 2 or 3 rounds of the smash meal, pass meal, and I was like, I don't like this. One, it was like taken away from me being able to feed, right? So I was feeding every week. And because I was feeding every week, I was forging these connections. I was learning where the camps were, like you said. I was starting to understand the landscape, the language, even things like, because there's a whole language that you have to learn, right? So they'll tell me all the time, like, well, don't go over there, there's a troll under there today. But they literally mean, like, there's a person under the bridge who's not friendly. Like, there's a troll under there, right? Like, so, but I was losing that, right? Because they move so often, and they would be able to tell me where they would be at the next week. But if I was missing a week, I would come back, and they were gone, frustrated there. And then cooking becomes very transactional when you're selling plates, right? Because when you're just cooking as an act of love, when you just go to grandma's house and pick up a plate, but you're just happy for the plate and the love. When you go to a restaurant and you pay money for food, you like picky about it. You like, well,
send it back.
Exactly, and you had a right to be. But I hate, not that anybody did, but it was killing my anxiety. I was like, what if somebody hates this? And every week people would be like, this was good, like, I loved it. Yeah. But every week I was still like, oh my gosh, like, what if somebody be like, this is terrible?
We're our biggest critics, for sure.
Honestly. So, I was working at Peloton, and going from making what I was making, to making $19 an hour was a huge swing, because anybody that watches my stories also knows, like, your girl be in Target.
Ooh, man. Whitney be shopping.
I be shopping. I be in Target, Amazon. Like, I love it. So, but I've always been able to maintain that habit. Who did not adjust well, switching to that $19 an hour, and that was tough, because since I stopped selling plates, I was now going from having a surplus of money to literally my checks at Peloton were like, oh, that was the other job. You look for a job. Peloton had hiring for like $19 an hour. But my checks at Peloton, when it was all said and done, were like $1,100 every 2 weeks, $1,200 every 2 weeks. And I understand that it sounds hypocritical, right, to complain about a $1,200 check and to also serve the homeless. But I think it plays into, and I'll get into that later, but just don't let me forget about that part. Okay. But it was tough, right? I was, all of my money was going to Whitney's Kitchen. I did not have an extra $200 a week to put into it, but I was committed at that point. And so I literally got to a point where I was like, Lord,
where you at?
I need you.
I never knew what it was like to be like this, but it was tough, right? Like, it was really tough. And to continue feeding through that, even though I didn't have the money for it, was very, very, like, hard. That was a test of my faith. But I was only at Peloton for 90 days, and it was by choice, because literally in November I was like, all right, I'm gonna make more money.
You got your call center experience.
I got scratched the itch, and I was good.
Checked.
I scratched the itch and it was good. So, come November, it had been like 2 months, and I was already like, this is not going to work. I will be bottomed out in another 30, 40 days. And so by the end of November, I had another job as a project manager. So now I'm a project manager for this tech company, and I make more money than I made ever, like, even when I was leaving Capital One. And so the Lord really showed himself to be faithful. But during that time, he showed me that Whitney's Kitchen Co. was his, right? Money was coming like out of random places. It was so crazy the way that he would provide for it, and the way where I would be like, I can't do it this week, and he'd be like, yes you can, right? Like, don't even worry about it, right? So that was a time that it tested my faith, but it showed me that, oh, this is his thing, right? So in a lot of ways it relieved a lot of pressure, because people say it all the time, right? So I'm in the process of shopping for a Whitney's Kitchen house, right? So an actual house to have in that area where they can come, they can eat. But people are like, are you looking for a house? Like, is it coming? I'm like, no, the Lord gonna send it. But I know that he will. I just know that this is kind of his baby, and I'm just like the vessel, and I'm good with that. I'm like, if I just get to show up on Sundays and cook and smile, then that's it. But that was a big test of my faith, is being that it is self-financed. What do you do when your finances like drastically drop? So.
And something that you touched on a lot, and we touched on it with some of our other guests as well, is just transition periods. And being able to leave or feeling comfortable leaving a place when you're not happy. I know a lot of people work jobs because of the finances, and like, I have to maintain a certain lifestyle, but I hate my job. Or I'm scared to leap out and take another position, whatever the case may be. But what kind of influenced some of your decisions, and how did you know it's time to go, whether it be Capital One or the education space or the call center, whatever the case may be? What kind of influenced your decisions to kind of walk out on faith without having another job, even though, like you said, the capitalist society we live in kind of makes you have to have a job in order to not be on the streets?
I'm going to say an answer that sounds cliche, but it is truly how I live my life. It is a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous thing to place your security in anything but the Lord. And so when I think about, so there's a story in the Bible, and everybody know about the children of Israel, right? And the Lord essentially had brought them out of Egypt, right, which was their place of slavery, and he was taking them to Canaan, which is the promised land. So there was this period in the middle, should have been 2 weeks, ended up being 40 years, where they crossed through the wilderness, okay? And so while they were in this wilderness, the Lord literally fed them from the sky, right? So bread would fall from the sky every morning, and then every night it would soak up, and then every morning it would fall again. But they were tasked with following a cloud, right? And so the Spirit of the Lord would essentially be in a cloud. And so as long as a cloud was over that space, the Lord was like, stay here, you good here. But at the blink of an eye, the cloud would move, and that meant it was time for them to move, right? So it was them learning how to follow the Spirit of the Lord instead of following their own desires. So there would be times where the cloud would be over a space for 3-4 months. There would be times where a cloud would be over a space for 2 days, and then they would start moving again. And I think being that we are now in the new covenant, meaning that this was early Bible. This was like book number 3 of the Bible. You're talking about Genesis, Exodus, we right there. We're on the second book of the Bible. Now that we're moving towards the end of the Bible, we have what's called the Holy Spirit, right? And that is that same Spirit that was in the cloud, but it's inside of us, right? And so people say things like, we're all God's little g, right? Like, but they're not incorrect, right? Because the Spirit of the Lord is within us, and that should be your cloud. And so when the grace leaves a place, it feels like that cloud has moved on, right? So a lot of us can think about a time when we've had a job and it was like trash. We really didn't like it, but we were like, it's a job. Right? You had grace for it, right? When you think about having grace for a thing, it's to have patience for it, to understand that it's growing, evolving, changing. Sometimes you lose your grace for a thing, though, right? Because you get to a point with your job where you say, okay, now it's time for me to go, right? You can feel it. You just can know for sure. And I think it's not just like that with jobs. It's like that in relationships with people. It's like that in friendships. It's like that with apartments, cities, any transition in life. There's an internal compass where the Spirit of the Lord speaks to you and tells you when it's time to leave a place. And you know when it is because you start asking, is it, right? It's time for me to leave. What's making you ask that? You know what I mean? You weren't asking that when you wasn't ready to leave.
Yeah, facts.
And so I think a lot of it comes down to trusting that, yes, I was fresh out of college making 65 racks at Capital One. So I was making like good money coming at 22, 23.
And from being a broke college student, that transition
is huge.
Like,
so to leave it, and I liked my job. I loved my boss. I loved my team. I loved the company. I loved it. I would go back to Capital One in a heartbeat. But I was like, Lord, why is the cloud moving? Like, this is a good spot. Like, and it was so crazy because I'll double back. When I was about to leave Capital One, they were so uninterested in having me leave that they offered me a position that would have basically doubled my salary, right? And put me in a completely different wing of the business. So I would have went into somewhere that I had little to no experience, but I would have been like on track for VP level before I was 30. Oh my God. So I was like, well, Lord, maybe you weren't telling me to leave.
Yeah, just transition.
Maybe you were saying, you know what I'm saying? But something in me just knew that it's just time for you to go, right? Ooh. And I understood to some level, even if it wasn't consciously, right, that Capital One is not secure, right? No matter how secure a job is, it's not secure. If 2020 didn't teach us anything, it should teach you that security is an illusion, right? Yeah. Anything can happen at any moment to displace you from where you are, and if that place is your well, or where you get your or where you feel like sustains you, you will be high and dry, right? Cool. And so left Capital One, crazy, because 2 months later, my manager, who I loved, left. And he had been at the company since he started out on like the phones at the call center. Yeah. And he had been there for 19, 20 years, and everybody just knew he was never going to leave. Yeah. But he left 2 months later, and when he left, our whole department got restructured. Everybody was miserable. I talk to my coworkers now, and they just like, this is just the worst, right? Yeah. They laid off the entire mortgage side of our business, so half of the company was displaced, right? Yeah. I didn't know any of that was coming down the pipeline, but when the cloud is moving, it's for a reason, and I think sometimes we don't follow that, and we get caught up, and so you say things like, I knew I should have. Right? Yeah. Like, I knew I should have insert what you knew you should do.
Right.
But you ain't do it.
Exactly. So to answer your question, you have to tap into the cloud in you, and you have to follow that, right? Because something in your internal compass knows at all times when there is the grace of God in a place and when you are in somewhere alone, right? And whenever you're in somewhere by yourself, it's probably time to roll up out of there. So.
Oh my gosh. So I've said this on multiple episodes already, but I'm trying to get to a place where it's clearer to me when God is speaking to me, and when it's not just Tia's, giving my own self this thought or this idea, or telling myself, oh, it was just a coincidence. So I'm working my way there, trying to grow my faith, so I can follow when the cloud moves and, know when to go on certain things. But as you all can tell, Whitney is an amazing speaker. I'm just enjoying listening to her. She is also a podcast host, and I would love for her to talk to us a little bit about her the podcast that she's on called The Last Supper.
Okay, so before I get to that, I do just want to touch on the portion that you said. Okay. Because for me, I had to start identifying what the different voices in my head sound like, right? Mm-hmm. So when you have certain thoughts, right? So like, for example, there were times where I would have a big thought, right? Yeah. And I would be thinking like, I wonder, is this right? And something in me would say, girl, you just all over the place, right? Yeah. You're just talking nonsense. Which would sound logical because it was a nonsensical thought, right? But it also sounded a lot like my mom, right? And I think the voices in our head, we have to start identifying whose voice they sound like. Okay. The voice of God it never sounds like your own, right? It always sounds like this peaceful side thought, right? So like when you are thinking things like, well, I can't leave my job because this is the job that pays me, and this and that, and I got these bills, and this and that. And then all of a sudden you hear this thought that's like, so what you gonna do if you get laid off? Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. You hear this voice that say, and that's God, right? He speaks in questions a lot. He challenges the thoughts that we are cycling around in, right? Yeah. And it's always a thought that seems to come out of third base, right? Yeah. Like it doesn't. If you think something, you're like, man, that sounds like something my mama would say. Probably something your mama has said, right? Yeah. Built into your subconscious. If you think things and you say, well, this sounds like something I would just say when I'm trying to get out of doing something I don't want to do, it probably is. Yeah. It sounds like your voice. Yeah. But then when you hear somebody say, well, you would take all that recipe test of food and give it away. That wouldn't be. Whose thought would that be, right? Your initial thought wouldn't be, let me just go to the grocery store and buy all of this food just to recipe test and then to just give it all away. Yeah. But then once you sit there, you say, that is what I should do. Yeah. It's always like that with God, right? Like, it's always like a thought that don't really sound like somebody else. It's just a thought that says, so would you rather be stuck at this job, or would you rather be limited to this job, or, well, what areas of your gift are you not using? And then you say, oh, you're right, it's so much that I want to do or that I want to explore that I'm not able to in this role, or maybe. So just follow the voices and try to identify does this sound like me? Does this sound like my mom? Or does this sound like a third party? And if it sounds like a third party and it aligns with goodness and things that are loving in nature, things that are correcting or convicting, it's probably the Lord.
I love that. And my sister has said that same thing. She's like, is it something that you probably would have never thought of? You know, if it's something that's coming to you, see if it's God.
Yeah.
You know, stop trying to just always write it off or make logic of it. Just follow.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So the podcast. So I am also on the Last Supper podcast. So that was started by this guy that I actually met at the Bible study that I go to. So I go to Lit Bible Study. Y'all have been there a few times. And he was essentially doing the same thing that I was doing with Whitney's Kitchen Co. at the time, was trying to define what this vision that he had gotten, what it should be, right? Because another thing about God is he'll give you pieces, right? So he'll tell you, I want you to cook. And you say, well, cook for who? Cook what?
Yeah.
Cook when? You know what I'm saying? Do I sell it? Do I give it away? Do I do cookbooks? Do I just post it? Do I open a catering business? He's like, just cook. Cook. And he's like, okay.
Bet.
Right. So he had been actually in alcohol sales. And so he was like selling liquor at bars and clubs, but he's very, very social, very good with people. So he loves networking, loves talking, meeting new people, ain't met a stranger. And he was gonna start this like networking platform. And then I don't even know how he got to the point of being a podcast, but it started there. Yeah. And then he was like, one day he was like, wait, I want you to do this podcast with me. And I'm like, okay. Like what's the podcast gonna be about? Like, you know. And from that point forward, it just kind of snowballed and we started recording. And so it's literally 4 of us. I'm the only girl. Pray for me.
Interesting.
The only. And so there's 3 guys, Jarrell, Chris, and Trey. So Chris is who started the podcast. Okay. And then Jarrell is another guy at Lit. He teaches with us at Lit. Brilliant mind. The most amazing heart. And then we have Trey. Trey is so cool. He's like everybody's favorite big brother. Loves the Lord. Loves scripture. And so we just kind of approach real topics because at the end of the day, we love the Lord, but we live on earth. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like we live amongst real people. We have real struggles. We feel real things, real feelings that don't always align with the Bible or the Word of God. And we face real things that everybody else is facing. And so we wanted a platform where we could talk through these things just from the perspective of a Christian. I think when I first started going to Lit Bible Study, something that was brand new to me was this idea that there could be this group of 60 to 100 young, black, attractive, successful, fun people. Fun people who want to kick it on the weekends, right? Yeah. But that's like, well, we love the Lord, right?
Yeah.
And I think magnifying those types of personalities is important, especially in our culture where we have this everybody gets a platform type of things. It's important to have people who look like you at every stage because there's so many people who look just like me, who are just like me, who maybe are thinking, well, let me see what this Christian thing is talking about, right? I'm gonna see what he's talking about. Maybe we is coming up on the end of days. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's looking a little rough. And so you want those people to have somewhere to go, some form of community, some people who look like them, feel like them, who don't feel like, oh, these are my church friends. It's so crazy when I first started going to that, I was like, those are my church friends, right? Yeah. Because I would hang out with y'all. I said it's not my church friends.
Yeah. I heard what you said.
But we would be at like March Mad, like going to like St. Patrick's Day, and we like 10 a.m. at the parade, right? And then if we didn't even make it 2 years in a row, right? That's neither here nor there.
Hey, listen.
Here nor there. Right. And I was coming out of college and I was thinking, well, I'm still human and young. I'm not about to be just like sitting around waiting on Communion Sunday before I get some type of socialization in, right? Like, but then I met these people that Lit and I was like, well, they cool, but like they church people. So I would have like keep them sectioned off, and then I started to realize
they people too.
I saw you at the St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
And that's okay.
Exactly. So That's where that came from. And so, long story short, Trey was a friend of Chris's, so he did not go to Lit. I didn't know him before we started the podcast, but he's absolutely amazing. His mind is crazy good. And so we just talk. I mean, they play a lot. They joke around a lot. We talk about things that are going on in the news. It's like the Breakfast Club, but like the Last Supper.
Yeah, there we go.
That's what it is. So.
And you touched on Lit, and actually I was attending a couple weeks ago on Zoom, and you were actually teaching the lesson. So I was in there, and wonderful lesson, by the way.
Thank you.
But did you ever, talk to us a little bit about Lit overall, but then did you ever think you would be leading discussion? I know we kind of talked about it before, but like, how did that happen? You gave us a couple lessons on here already, but how did you ever see yourself doing that, and how did that like transition into just attending Lit to actually being a leader in Lit happen?
So it's funny that you asked this, because that's still an area where I'm like, I don't teach at Lit. Right. I actually ended up teaching that time because I had my back against the wall. Right. And so I was probably going to Lit. So I started going to Lit September. The day I gave my 2-week notice at Capital One was the day I started going to Lit. Right. Okay. So you talk about the sovereignty of God and how things work together. But when I was working at Capital One, because I came down to Dallas and went straight into work, I didn't have a life outside of that. Right. I had no friend group. I had no real social life, like unless Seb was doing something and he would invite like me and my friend Kelly, like other than that I was like, I haven't built the life for myself, right? And so it was crazy that the day that I put my 2-week notice in was the day that I started going to Lit. And so that was September. Around December, so they did what was called small groups at the time, and my small group leader texted me, shout out to AG, and was like, hey, so we would like if you could come and like, maybe, are you interested in being a small group leader? And I was like, no, but thank you. Truly. No, but thank you. I was like, I appreciate it, but no. And she's like, well, just think about it. Literally. Just think about it. I'm like, okay, I'll think about it, right? So, thought about it. Not really. Right. And she hit me back up a week later and was like, hey, just checking back in with you. I was like, hey, no, thanks again, no, but it's just not what I want to do. And she's like, well, just come to this meeting, right? Like, Joe said that Joe's the leader, like the teaching lead at Lit. And so she's like, well, Joe said, like, you don't have to teach. Like, it's not a commitment. Just come and at least see what we talking about and meet the people.
Get your foot in the door.
It was a setup. Yeah. It was a setup because I got there and they were like, all right, so let's start planning out the curriculum for next. And I'm like, well, hold on.
I was just coming to check it out.
Honestly. So I taught once. That April. So that was December. Actually, with Chris, the guy that we do the podcast with. He was the other small group leader that started at the same time that I did. And so we taught for the first time in April, and I don't believe that I taught again after that. It's not for me. It's not what I'm not a stage type of person, and it's not because I feel uncomfortable on the stage, albeit I have like the same levels of like stage fright and things as other people do. But I just don't feel called to teach. I don't feel that that's where my gifts are at this point, right? So I keep talking about the Bible, but the Bible tells us that we are all different parts to the same body. So if you consider the human body to just be humanity, right? You may be a hand and Cedric may be a kneecap. The problem that we often run into is that hands want to be kneecaps, and kneecaps want to be hands. Kneecaps want to be ears. Want to be
eyeball. Listen.
But what happens is every part is critical in its role. And so if the pinky toe is trying to be an elbow, the whole body is off balance. And so I try to be sensitive about where my gifts need to be placed or what role I need to play. And I find myself enjoying stirring the direction from the background, right? So I'm also on the board of directors for this company called Humble Over Hype, and I run they host conferences every year like for the youth. And one year our stage manager was like out, so they were like, can you run the conference? And I'm like, from the background. And I loved it. I loved sitting up in the booth, and I loved being the one to cue the lights, to be aware of the entire production in a way where you can orchestrate it so that it sees itself through. And so in Lit, I taught that one time and I was like, I don't want to do this, Joe. I told you this and I don't want to do it. They hate it. Every time they were like, you're not going to teach. But after about a year, because mind you, this is like 2019 at this point.
Right.
So
Yeah.
after about a year, they just kind of like, Whitney not teaching. She don't teach. But I do Bible studies for the leaders, right? So what I started doing was, I said, well, I'll teach y'all, right? I will curate studies or lessons, and I will teach y'all what I know or what I would teach. And then y'all go out and y'all spread it, right? Like, and so that's the role that I took. Okay. And that's where I was been at for the last year comfortably.
Yeah.
Right. I probably did that for about 6 months. We started that in about October, September of this year. And then we were planning out the calendar for this last little series, and they were like, we don't have anybody to do this like section. Like, everybody is already doubled up. We're short on leaders. Like, we had just throughout the pandemic and just from relocation, general life things, we had lost a few small group leaders, and they were like, wait, you got to fill in this hole. So I literally taught that 2 weeks ago. That was my first time teaching in a year and a half, and it was solely because we needed the assistance. It was somebody just had to do it by themselves if not.
Okay.
So I don't plan on it being a regular thing.
Well, you should, because it was a great lesson. Learned a lot. Really appreciated some of the gems you dropped and kind of how you and your other small group leader played off each other. So although you don't enjoy it, like we talked about, God sometimes puts you in uncomfortable places in order for you to grow. And you may not think it's for you at the time. So just throw it out there. It may be for you. You just don't know it yet.
Well, I never know when my cloud moves.
Hey,
so.
there we go.
If the cloud move over there, then the cloud move over there. I definitely enjoy it. I love teaching people about the Bible. I love talking about the Bible. And I think I teach in other facets, right? I teach all of it. I'm always talking about the Bible. People call me all the time like, is this true? Is this really in the Bible? Right? Like, or I have one friend that's like, she is like my most trill friend from St. Louis. Okay, like, had Boosie on her birthday cake. Okay? But she's smart. She's so smart, and she loves history. She loves reading about everything. She's reading the Bible from like the beginning, right? So she was like, well, I need to understand what's going on. So she's like, I'm gonna just start from the beginning and read it. She texts me probably once a week like, girl, I'm in 1 Samuel now and they tripping. I don't understand. If I was God, I would have been done with this thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I love it. I love the Bible. So I teach in a ton of different ways. But I think in a church setting, people need like charisma and motivation. They need what's gonna get them through the week.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, let's talk about the children of Jacob.
Yeah.
We need to apply
you got all
that
that with me.
you know, so yeah, so that's that. But who knows? Who knows where my cloud will move? Yeah. But I appreciate it for sure.
So where does your sense of like faith come from? Like, did you grow up in the church, or did you discover it on your own, or where did kind of finding God, and also, I mean, a lot of people love God and, you know, go to church or whatever, but not a lot of people, I'm guilty of it, actually read the Bible and understand it and know about it and study it. So how did that all come about for you?
Yeah, so the Bible contains the Word of God, but the Bible is not the Word of God in itself, right?
Yeah.
Jesus is the Word of God. And so I did not grow up in church. My Nana would go to church. So we would go for things like holidays, Mother's Day. So I have black church memories, right? Like I was in the Easter play.
Yeah.
I remember Mother's Day breakfast every year. Yeah. But going to church every Sunday, no. I wasn't raised in a highly religious house. My dad is a praying man, but he never, like, we didn't go to church every Sunday or anything like that. So, and actually, I had a lot of beef with God growing up. So I think I always knew something in me just understands, right, that this is not all that there is. I came from somewhere else. Yes. And I think something in all of us is constantly looking to get back to where we came from, right? That's why we're always looking for that love or connection or home, because we're looking to replug back into somewhere. But I think what I understand is that through death, we understand that there's nothing on earth that you can plug into. Right? And so by default, anything that you look for on earth is a substitute for whatever it is that you actually came from. And I think kids have a natural curiosity where they say, well, what am I here for? Right? Who put me here? Yeah. Where did I come from? Who made me look like this? Who, you know what I'm saying? Like, how did I get to these parents instead of those parents? Right? Exactly. And there's so many questions that you just have to understand that there's something much, much larger and bigger than you that you are a part of. And so I think I've always been cognizant of that. But I've always taken issue with the way that God was presented and that religion and church was presented to people. Because I used to say things all the time like, I'm sure God is good and he out there, but he ain't checking for me, right? Like he not worried about me. I remember being like 13 or 14 and being like, with my whatever teenage problems I had at the time, right? Like, there's a God out there, but like he don't care about me, right? And I tell people that because I think everybody or most people feel that way or have felt that way at some point, right? Like I'm sure there is a God out there, but like I'm down here trying to figure this stuff out by myself, right? Like I'm down here trying to really in real life get some stuff figured out, so I don't have time to be waiting on like this, God to come through for me. But I think me being maternal in nature, I understand that when you create a thing, you don't forget a thing. And so whatever I came from, whatever created me, is still consciously and constantly looking out for me, right? When I look through my life and when I look back over the things that I've come through, there was something looking out for me. You know what I mean? Like, and I think everybody can look back at their lives and say, somebody was looking out, right? And that somebody,
so many times,
exactly, that somebody is the Lord. And not only is he the Lord, but he's the Lord who came to earth, right? So the way that I shifted into my Christian faith, so like I said, I always knew that there was a God, but I went through a very, very tough season in my teenage years, where I was homeless, right? And it wasn't because my parents were homeless. It was because I was no longer in my parents' home. And I started going to church. So I got into an altercation where I was hitting the head with a skillet. And so I was in the hospital, Christian Northeast. Y'all from St. Louis. So Christian Northeast. All right, just think about whatever the raggediest hospital you possibly think about, never want to end up at. That's where I was at. And the doctor was like, well, since you have a brain bleed, and if this at this point I was probably 16, he was like, if this doesn't go down, you're gonna have to have brain surgery. Now at the time I had horrible self-esteem, right? And so my first thought was, if I had brain surgery, that means I gotta shave my head. And the last thing I need is to be bald, right? So when you think about teenage problems and when you think about the extent to which the Lord cares for us, I only pray at this point because I was like, Lord,
I can't lose my hair.
I remember being in the hospital like, this is horrible. Like I cannot lose my hair. And that brain bleed went out, right? And so I said, well, let me just see what's up. So me and my friends started going to church. And I think a lot of people have some experience like that where they have this like, well, if you real, now's the time, Lord, right? Like you gonna show up, this is it. But the thing about God that I love is that he lives for that moment, right? He lives for that. He like, showtime, right? Like I don't even say nothing but a word.
Say less.
Right, say less, and I see you on Sunday, right? So I started going to this church in St. Louis, and at the time, mega churches were fairly new. And so to go to a church where you see like the lights and the cool music and cool pastor and skinny jeans, I was like, this ain't bad. You know what I'm saying? They got a slide in the kids club. They got a coffee club outside. So I started going to church there, and my faith just kind of snowballed from there. But my understanding of the word is a spiritual gift, right? And we all have those. And I think identifying purpose starts with identifying what gifts were you sent here with. I don't read the Bible nearly as much as people think I read the Bible. I really don't. I just understand it when I do read it, if that makes sense. And I have a love for the text. But I grew into my faith slowly. I mean, like very slowly. And it was and has always been about the relationship with my Creator, and not the relationship with my church, which is why I hesitate with how close I attach myself to the church, because I mean, people hate to hear it, but the church killed Jesus, right? So you want to make sure that when you are building your relationship with Christ, that it's with him, that it's that relationship with the Spirit that he placed inside of you, and that it's balanced out and checked by the Bible, not steered and restricted by the Bible.
It is so important to have conversations like that with people that we view and see, who we have this idea like they got it together. They understand life, they understand God, they have this amazing relationship. But I'm so happy you were able to talk about and share when you weren't so sure about God, and when it was like, I don't really know. And you just, it's just so important. It is like, it's essential to hear things like that from people, like I just said, who we view as having it all together. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, no, I don't have it all. At all. I'm not even close. But it's like I said, I just trust that. I just know that there's a God that looks out for me, and I trust him to continue doing that. It's truly not as deep as it sounds, and I think people try to make it a lot deeper than it is. But the fact of the matter is, most people can admit that they believe there's a God, right? Yeah. And that is the case because most people feel a longing within them to connect with wherever it is that they came from, with whatever it is that had a purpose for them. Yeah. That's why people are like, what is my purpose, right? You get this big movement nowadays about like purpose and calling and am I walking in my lane? Yeah. How do you know that if you don't connect with the person who created you, right? Like how would, if Steve Jobs didn't show us what an iPhone was for, why would we be using it as paperweights, right? We'd be like, look at this, I can call, text, and use the whole papers down on my desk so they don't fly out in the wind, and we wouldn't have a clue that you could take photography grade photos, or that you could access the internet, or that you don't know what a thing is for unless you talk to its creator. And so I think all of us have that desire. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have more of a problem with how the creator is presented than they do with the fact that there is a creator, right? And I know the Jesus thing sticks a lot of people up, but the Jesus thing is fascinating because the Jesus thing shows how we know that our God is the God of all gods, right? Because he was the only one that came down as a man and went through what we went through, right? Just so that he could connect on every single level, and then die so that he could put his spirit in us so that we could be like him, right? Like, so it's less complicated than it seems. And I would tell everybody to ask yourself, do you have a problem with your creator or with the way that he's presented? And if it's with the way that he's presented, then work with him to deconstruct that. Does that make sense? Because the church killed him. So
right, yeah.
If you keep having terrible experience with the church, it's no different than churches crapshoot like jobs are, right? You start a new job, you don't know if your boss is going to be fantastic or if he's going to be horrible. You don't know if your coworker's going to be cool or if they're going to be snitches. You just don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, church is no different. It's just a corporate conglomeration of people who have a common goal, and that's to hopefully get closer to the Lord, but they're not going to be perfect at it. So
not at all.
Ask yourself, do I have an issue with my creator or with the way that he's being presented to me? And if it's with the way he's being presented, get to know him outside of that. I did not go into a church probably for the first three years of me like being like, okay, like let me explore this God thing, right? Because I needed time on my own to be able to get to know him, so that when I heard things that didn't sit right, I can say that's not of God, or that don't sound right, as opposed to being like, well, dang, I guess God said
and just taking what you're getting.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was that.
I'm just dropping bars and gems all evening. Something I wanted to touch on, just your overall sense of serving others, and Whitney's Kitchen isn't the only way that you serve others. As you talked about your Target runs and all your interior design, can you talk to us more about your passion for that and kind of that project as well?
Yeah, so service is what we owe back to our community, right? The only way that an organism functions is if all things pour back into it. So when you think about our ecosystem, the plants have a job, then the bugs eat the plants, the animals eat the bugs. Bug-eating animals get eaten by meat-eating animals, and then humans eat meat-eating animals, and then humans die and go right back into the soil and replenish the grass, right? So everything feeds back into itself. The society that we live in tries to get us to believe that that is not the case, right? That you are responsible for your own life. You are the creator of your own destiny. You look out for you, and you protect your peace, and that's how it works. But that's why the world is crumbling, right? Because we all have gifts, and we all have something that needs to be given back. So in church, we talk about tithes. And people always have a problem with like, well, I gotta get past my money. What do you need my money for? Well, it's not about that. But what are you giving to anybody, right? The concept of a tithe is to say, I have so much that I have an obligation to give back to somebody in some way. So even if I was good at taxes, right? Tax season comes around, there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing 3 to 4 people taxes for free. Why are you not doing free taxes for single moms? Does that make sense? Say you're a fashion designer, you design clothes. Why you don't, at least around prom season, why you don't design 3 free dresses for girls in need, right? It's finding small ways that we can use our gift to elevate our entire community. And so that's what I do with Whitney's Kitchen Co. So to answer your question, I am not shy about the fact that I like shopping.
Yes.
I like decorating things. I like to be able to enjoy the pleasures and the pleasantries of life. I started another company.
Another one.
Yeah, I know it sounds like I'm involved with a lot, but it's less chaotic than it seems. But so I do the Cedar House. So that's where y'all see me either decorating people's homes, creating those mood boards. So people come to me and they like, sis, my apartment look like this one girl, she said my apartment is very much giving jailhouse rock. Like, can you help me out? so we've been working on her apartment and getting it in a place where it meets her needs.
Yes.
But it's the same concept, right? Because the place that you do live, for people who do have somewhere to live, your home is pivotal to your mental well-being.
Oh my gosh.
The state of your house
Yes.
impacts the state of your life. When I was younger, my mama used to tell me all the time, you see, your life a mess because your room not clean. I'd be like, girl, you just say anything. You know what I'm saying? You just say anything.
But it's
Now
true.
I understand. It
Now you
truly
see,
is a
yeah.
reflection of your life. And so when people are in homes or in houses that are not homes, they have that same emptiness and void that people who don't have houses have. So then I said, well, this is where I can monetize a skill, because this is something that is a luxury that people want to pay for.
Yes.
Food is not a luxury. People need to eat regardless.
Yeah.
But having a bedroom that you could come home to and be like, oh, yeah, like, this makes me feel like a queen. That's something that people are willing to pay for. They just don't know how to do it themselves.
Yeah.
They just like, I just can't put the colors together or
Yeah.
pick out pieces. Yeah, and so people ask me to do things like curate mood boards for them. So what I do is I go online and they send me pictures of their house, and I just kind of talk to them about what types of things are you going through? What types of vibes do you like? What types of, when you come into your house, what do you want to feel, right? Because that's huge. So for me, my house, there's a huge tree in front of my window, like a huge tree.
Yeah.
But my window takes up the full wall. So if my blinds are open, it looks like I live in a tree house. But I wanted to extend that all the way into my room because I love nature, but I hate being outside. Okay? I don't like bugs. I don't like anything. So in my house, I have greenery. I have grass. I have varying shades of brown, charcoal couch, right? Deep alternated neutrals, because it feels like you're living in a tree house. It feels like I'm grounded. It's a feeling that keeps you grounded, and that's how I want it to feel, right? Versus somebody else might say, I want to feel luxurious. I want to feel like the work that I'm doing in this life is paying off. Somebody else might say, I want to feel clean. Some people like all whites, right? Because they like, I just want to feel uplifted, bright, energetic. Some people like modern, edgy. I want to feel like, oh yeah, I'm in the back cave. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is my zone. So I do all of that through the Cedar House. I find pieces on the side of the road, right? So I'll be driving and I'll be like, look at that dumpster, that coffee table in the dumpster. I can take that. Real life.
I've seen
real
it.
life. Y'all have seen me pull up on a dumpster. I transform it and I sell it. I just flip the bag, right? So then you say, okay, well, I found this coffee table in the side of the dumpster for free $99. Rehab it, put it on Facebook Marketplace, quick $100, right? So that's why I profit. Right?
Gotcha.
But I love Target. Target, if you want to sponsor your girl, hello. I'm wearing Target right now.
Listen,
on the feet, okay, I just got these 2 days ago. But yeah, so you see that a lot in my stories. Me going to Target. I love like clearance shopping. So I love going to Marshall's, Ross, just seeing what I could find. I don't know. I love taking anything and making it new. I don't know.
I feel that. And I'm gonna need some of your assistance because my apartment, everyone comes in. Right? Everybody comes like, this is a bachelor pad. Where your table at? What? No, nothing's on the walls. I'm like, I don't have time for all that. So I definitely need your assistance on that soon. I remember a couple years ago, actually, I texted you. I was trying to learn how to cook. And I texted you, I said, hey, Whitney, can you send me some recipes, easy recipes that I can cook myself? And then you text me back, was like, hey, said, I'm going to just come over because I can't send you recipes. I got to show you the love that goes into that. So in your Instagram bio, it says, Jesus saves, laughter heals, love changes. So that goes back to the love piece that you were mentioning earlier. What inspired that piece, and how is that a reflection of who you are and how you operate?
That's how I live my life. I mean, if you could sum me up, that would be it, right? Jesus saves, has saved, will saved, covers, right? Jesus is what carries me. Anything you see me have, anything, when people look at me and say, oh, you got it together. All you see is the light of Christ, right? That radiates off of me, but you're not it's so bright that it covers what I truly am, right? And people that know me for real be like, you know?
Yeah.
But the light of Christ, it has a way of covering us up, right? Laughter heals. I laugh at everything. I play too much. I get on people's nerves. I love laughing. I literally make jokes about things that just like, Whitney, this is not like, it's how I learned to get through stuff. Like I told myself, I told you guys that I have had quite a life, and some of the things, if I didn't laugh about them, I'm nervous to think where I would be, right?
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for my sense of humor, and I love to laugh. It's the best thing. I feel like it recharges you, rejuvenates you. It, like, laughter truly does heal.
Oh yeah.
And then love changes. That's all that will change a thing. That's all that all issues are rooted from some deficiency in the department of love, right? Anything that we are facing as a community, right? So when we think about the state of our world today, when we think about, well, we got all of these people that's living like this, and people that are homeless, and kids ain't learning nothing in school. That's because there's somebody that's not playing the role that they're supposed to be playing. There's somebody that's supposed to be on the school board that's somewhere in the tax accountant's office. And there's somebody that's supposed to be helping black businesses with their taxes that's somewhere trying to start a rap career. And there's somebody, you know what I mean? Like, there's somebody that's not playing their role. The way that the Lord designed us was that we were all set here to meet a need. And so love changes because when you act in love, you make small steps that are the ones that matter. Does that make sense? Like, I can't think of a situation that you could run into, or a problem that you can run into where love from somebody else or from yourself will not fix it, right? Even when you think about people who, like, this time around had they pipes frozen over, right? And they fell over, flooded out their apartment. It's love from a neighbor that says, just come stay with me, right? It's when you freeze in your apartment, it's love from a neighbor that says, hey, come live with me. It's when you've had a horrible relationship with your mom and your dad and your family, you don't have anybody else, and then you meet a friend who knows you like the back of their hand, and it changes your life, right? It's when you are angry at just the things that life has thrown your way, and you just cannot move yourself from your own bitterness, and then you get a puppy, right? And you say, how could I love this little thing? This dog just loves me no matter what. Right? Like, love changes. It just changes everything. It's what moves the landscape, and I just firmly believe that. So that's my little bio, my little motto. Jesus saves, laughter heals, love changes. We all need to either be saved, healed, or loved.
Ooh.
One of the two.
Another bar.
I'm processing everything because I'm learning a lot about Winnie that I did not know about her upbringing and just how she is as a person, and I'm just taking it all in. And I've so enjoyed this conversation today. Cedric and I always end every interview with like a little segment piece, so I'm going to let him jump into it. It's just so us and our listeners can learn even more about you on just like on a more quirky level. Okay, so I'm going to let Cedric jump into our segment before we wrap up today. I wish we can do this for 5 hours.
Yeah, we can. It's going to be a good one. But just a few quick hitters. First couple of things that come to your mind. What's your favorite / most used non-social media app?
Non-social media app. Probably my Fidelity app.
Okay.
Probably my Fidelity app, because that's where I'm making money at. And then the music app.
Okay. What are you listening to? Who's on your playlist right now?
Oh my goodness, a little bit of everything. I'm not gonna lie to y'all right now. There's a song by Marvin Sapp. I have 3 songs that are like on repeat right now. So there's a song by Marvin Sapp called Undefeated, and it is the most beautiful song. And then there's a song by this girl named Aquila, and it's called like It's the Vibe for Me. And it's a song you kind of hear on TikTok. I love that song. And then Big Bags busting out the Bentley Bentayga. Balenciaga brought it back. So yeah, those probably my 3. Oh, and I love trap music. So Lil Durk and Lil Baby have a song out called Still Trapping, and the beat made me feel like I could do anything.
Okay.
It's language warning, but the beat, if you like trap, the beat will make you feel like, what'd you say? You know me? Like, so yeah, that's what I'm listening to right now.
Okay.
St. Louis at heart.
Right.
I'm telling through.
I know you love to travel, just like me. We haven't been able to do that as much during the Rona, during 2020. But when the world, if it opens back up, whatever that means, what are 3 places that you haven't been before that you actually want to go to?
So, I'm claiming that the Lord is going to take me to the Maldives. I always see these little cottages in the, like, you see like the little cottages in the ocean where the water is like crystal blue. It's like white sand up under it. And people are living in these cottages where like you can look down the floor into the ocean. Yeah, I want to go to the Maldives. Bora Bora is like that too. So either one of those. I want to go to Greece. That is like on my bucket list. I am fascinated by just the history, the culture, in that place, and I think I would love to go there. And then I want to go to a mountain trip in Colorado. I have been all over this country and have not made it to Colorado yet. So I would love to do like some type of cabin trip when it's all said and done. So those would probably be my 3.
Cool. Yeah, T was just there over the weekend. How was it?
Denver was really nice.
Okay.
I went skiing for the first time. That was quite the experience.
That's what I was gonna say. How'd that go?
I fell every single time,
but you did it.
You know what?
You was out there.
I did it. So I'm gonna definitely go back when it gets warm so I can go hiking, but definitely make that happen.
Yeah, I want to for sure.
Yes.
I want to for sure.
Are you and your family, do y'all still do the cruises when that's gonna open back up? They used to do like 7-day cruises across the world.
My family kicks it. Okay, my family kicks it. So we do a big cruise once a year somewhere. It's a rite of passage once you get grown because you got to pay your way. Because one thing about my family is they're gonna get that drink package. The way that drink package is like, if you've never been on a cruise, it's unlimited everything. It's like a floating paradise. It's like if you take a city and put it on like the middle of the ocean and you just lose contact with the rest of the world, but everything you need is there, right? So it's like unlimited food. You pay the little $150 and you get unlimited drinks, top shelf. So it's a crazy environment where you can just walk up. You just like, what do we feel like doing? I'm like, I don't know. Let's go to the show. So then you go to the theater. You're like, well, hold on, let me get a drink before I go. You know what I'm saying?
Literally.
You just walk up to the bar and then you go to the pool. You're like, what they doing out on the pool? So my family loves cruises, and recently we've started going outside of the United States. So we always would go like to Mexico, Jamaica, somewhere tropical. But the last one that we did we went to the Bahamas right before the Cancun. Right before the
I remember that
pandemic, literally the week of. But before that, we went to Italy, and that was like a 10-day cruise. But I ain't gonna lie, by day 7, I was like,
hey,
wrap it up. I'm tired of eating snails. I'm good here. So, but yeah, no, we do. We go on big cruises. It's a big thing. We have fun. We have a good time. So.
Love it. I went on my first cruise a few years ago, and like you said, we did the drink package. So I walked up, I said, what does this card get me? Like, what can I order? They're like, what do you want? I said, I'm sorry? So I was like, hey, so you're telling me if I order white Hennessy.
So I can get 1942.
And you're telling me I want Patron shots for everybody at the bar. They're like, put it on the card.
Yeah. So
literally, it's crazy.
It was. I did a 3-day, and it was fun. Next, I probably want to do a 5.
Yeah.
3 was like just too short, but I think 10 and 7 is too long. So, but yeah, cruises are definitely fun. I definitely need to go on one of those out of the tropical, like one of those Europe ones. I definitely need to do that.
Yeah.
But 5 dinner guests, dead or alive, that you want to have dinner with.
5 dinner guests, dead or alive. All right.
Yeah, you and 5 others.
Well, now I'm trying to make sure personalities line up.
Yeah. Gotta be strategic.
Sure, I would do Whitney Houston, Jesus, Nipsey Hussle.
Okay.
I'm one of the 5, right? I don't gotta give myself a ticket.
Huh? No.
Okay.
I was thinking about that. I was like, is Whitney one of the 5?
I'm trying to create a funny dinner.
It doesn't have to be a celebrity, anybody either. It can be, family members, whatever.
Bernie Mac. Let me do Bernie Mac instead of Nipsey Hussle.
Okay.
Sorry, Nipsey. So I'm gonna do Jesus, Whitney, Bernie. I'm trying to think of people who I've always wanted to pick their brains.
Yeah, chop it up with.
Yeah. Maybe JFK.
Really?
Yeah, because he was like our last president that was truly like trying to help.
Yeah.
Work for it. What am I at?
You need one more.
I need one more.
Yeah. You got Whitney Houston, Jesus, Bernie Mac,
JFK.
And TD Jakes.
TD Jakes. Okay.
That would be a very interesting dinner.
Yeah.
And funny.
Yeah.
Bernie Mac is there, first of all.
Lots of personalities, lots of laugh, lots of good conversation for sure.
Yeah. Jesus, Whitney, and Bernie Mac act a lot alike. And Jesus, JFK, and TD Jakes act a lot alike.
And I see what you're saying. I really do. I see what you're saying because Jesus is it all in all and everybody. I like that.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
That's what I would pick. That would be my dinner table.
Who's a person that you know with a great story to share that you think should be a guest on our show?
A great story to share that should be a guest on the show. I'm gonna go with Joe. I'm gonna go with Joe, who leads Lit. He has an amazing story just about going from being like the all-American kind of guy in college, right, to being a teacher, right, to finding his space in mentorship and then being thrust into ministry. So then he ended up being a pastor, and now he's taking on some new ventures in life, right? But in the midst of all of this, like, he got married, and he's this young black guy who's this Renaissance man trying to start this family, and his parents have been married, or grandparents been married for like 50, 60 years. So he has a crazy interesting story. So if y'all talking to anybody else, and he loves to talk.
All right, cool. Well, you got to plug us then.
All right, Joe, I got you. I'm actually headed over there right now. So
all right, cool.
Drop a word in for y'all.
Where can people learn more about you? You got to drop your IG handles, your Twitters, your Facebooks. Where can people learn more about Whitney's Kitchen, Cedar House, Humble Over Hype, Lit, all of the above? Drop the tags.
So on Instagram, Whitney's Kitchen Co. is at Whitney's Kitchen Co. So that's WHITNEYS Kitchen CO. So Whitney's Kitchen Co. My personal Instagram is at Miss Thompson. So it's at _ MISSTHOMPSON _ and then all of the other links are there.
Okay, there we go.
All of the links are
all
in
of her
my
bio.
Yeah, they're in my bio.
Cool. What's next for Whitney in the next couple of years? How do you want to see yourself grow?
So I definitely see myself building out the profitable end of my business. So with the Cedar House, I inevitably want to transition out of corporate for good. And I want to have a physical house for Whitney's Kitchen Co. Where they can literally come and like sit down and watch the game, where I cook out in a real kitchen. So that's where I kind of see myself in the next few years, is building out that plan to have the physical house or houses by that time. And then strengthening my investment portfolio. So I didn't get into this, but I'm like big into investments right now.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping in 5 years my investment portfolio is like
looking pretty.
So I can get up out of this corporate space.
I feel that. And then just to end it off with, what advice would you give to someone who wants to embark on the path of entrepreneurship or transitioning out of the corporate space?
To connect back to what's inside of you before you make any moves. I think the biggest problem that people try to jump into entrepreneurship, which is a space where you have to be sure in your identity.
Yeah.
You have to know who you are, know what you bring, know what you're not good at and what needs to be outsourced, and know where you're headed or what your goal is or your purpose is. If you, and not purpose as in thing to do, but reason for doing it, right? I am venturing into entrepreneurship, and I don't have a clue what that looks like specifically, but I am connected enough to myself to know who I am, what my principles are, what types of things fuel me, and what I feel I've been put on this earth to do in general. Right? So I say all the time, like, I don't know how I'm going to provide homes, but that could be through a real estate portfolio, that could be through Whitney's Kitchen Co., that could be through an interior decor company, that could be owning branches of TJ Maxx and Target, who knows, right? But to know your sphere, know yourself, you don't have to know the plan, but you need to know you.
Gotcha.
That's what I would say.
Okay, perfect. Well, Whitney, we definitely appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. I hope all of our listeners enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. But thanks for joining us.
No worries. Thank y'all for having me. I love this so much, and I love what y'all are doing. So thank you. I think the people are going to love being able to get to know each other like this. This is a good platform.